Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unscripted English. I'm Lawton.
And I'm Kit.
Hey, Kit, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Lawton?
I'm doing pretty well. I actually just got back from a short trip to the U.S. to see my family. I was in the U.S. for about 2 weeks. My family lives in Virginia, in kind of the Appalachian Mountains on the near the East Coast. So yeah, I got to see the family and spend some time with my nieces. And just got back a few days ago, so still struggling with jet lag a little bit, but getting better, getting better.
Aw, that sounds like so much fun. I'm jealous.
It was fun. It was fun. You say you're jealous, but I think you went back to the U.S. like 5 times last year. So
I did. I did go back a lot last year, so.
yeah, but yeah,
Still.
it was really good. Yeah, it was really good. So our topic for today is going to be an interesting one. For any of our viewers or listeners who saw our first episode, you'll know that Kit is a huge Star Trek fan. I think it would be fair to say that they are, in fact, kind of a super fan, even, um, which is going to be fun because I know, to be honest, very little about Star Trek. I think I've probably seen less than two full episodes in my entire life. And of the films, I think I've only seen it was J.J. Abrams that did those the more recent Star Trek films. And I enjoyed the first one, but was not that big of a fan of the follow-ups. So yeah, this should be really interesting, both for me and hopefully also for our viewers. Take it away, Kit.
Yeah. All
Teach
right.
us.
I'll take it away. So I'm not going to go into like too much detail about the actual contents of Star Trek because it is such a huge franchise. Just basic information about Star Trek if you're curious. Today I'm mostly going to be talking about the original series. So that is the very first Star Trek, and it first aired in 1966. So it is a very old TV show. And the premise was basically that it's this show and it follows a crew of mostly humans as they explore space. It's an American sci fi show and it's inspired a large number of different movies and spin off series. So that was sort of the first iteration of Star Trek, but there are a lot more shows now that a lot of people watch. A lot of people, like, maybe might not have even seen the original series, might only be more familiar with more recent Star Trek shows. So that's sort of the basic information about it. And what I want to talk about today, what I thought would be fun, is talking about technology that has been inspired by Star Trek, and specifically inspired by this very first show, the original series.
Very
So
cool.
what I did is I put together a little game for Lawton.
Okay, that should be
um,
interesting.
so I'm gonna share a PowerPoint, and it's basically just got a bunch of pictures from the original series with different technology, and I'm gonna ask Lawton what he thinks that technology is, what it is, and
Cool.
what it might have inspired. So we'll see if Lawton can figure them out.
I don't expect to
Sound
do
good?
very well in this, but yeah, it does sound good, and that's very cool because yeah, sci-fi, people often say is kind of a forerunner to actual technology. So that will be cool to see what kind of technology Star Trek has influenced, as it has been around, for so long.
Yeah. I think a lot of sci-fi shows, like you said, inspire technology and new developments. So not all of these might not be 100% like it only came from Star Trek, but I think Star Trek definitely did have some influence in the development. So
Sure.
yeah.
Okay.
Let's
Very
go.
cool. Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we are. So what we're looking at is the device that we are using here. In the first picture, Captain Kirk is talking into this device, and in the second one, Spock is.
Yeah, so this definitely looks like an inspiration for a cell phone or a mobile phone.
Yeah. And I think,
What did
interestingly, it specifically looks to me a lot like a flip phone.
a flip phone? Yes, indeed, especially the one that Spock is holding. It very much looks like, in fact, the flip phone that I had when I was about 16 or 18. So
Yeah.
yes, definitely looks like it inspired that. What did they call it on the show?
So this is a communicator.
That's what I thought.
And yeah, so it basically is a cell phone, right? You don't have to put in a number or anything, but they'll just like take it out and they'll flip it open and then they'll talk and it will communicate with the ship. In later series, they don't use this device. They change it so they have, the pins on their shirt and they'll just tap the pin to communicate with whoever they're looking to communicate with. But in this very first show, they had the communicator that they used.
Gotcha. Very cool.
So that was an easy one, right?
Yeah, that was an easy one.
Yeah. All right, let's see about this next one. I think this one is going to be a bit trickier.
Yeah, I probably would be tempted to say something like a Geiger counter or something, which reads the amount of radiation in a given area, but I doubt that that's it. Yeah, I don't think I know for this one. You're gonna have to tell me.
So, I mean, maybe as a hint, this is also a portable device that basically gives readings of different things and gives you information.
Yeah.
Does that
Yep.
help at all? It does still sound like a Geiger counter or something.
Yeah, because of the readings thing. I don't know. I'm stumped.
So this is called, in the show, it's called a tricorder. And I saw a lot of people online talking about how this was an influence in the development of smartphones. So
Oh,
kind of piggybacking off of the cell phones.
cell phones.
It's a portable device that you can carry around that gives you readings, that gives you information. It's kind of similar. I feel like this one might be a little bit more of a stretch, but I saw a lot of articles sort of citing this one as influence for a smartphone.
That's interesting. Yeah, especially more recent smartphone technology where you can like scan your surroundings and get information about it. Yeah, I can definitely see an influence that this had on that for sure.
Yeah. So that one is a trickier one. Like I said, I think that one might be a bit
That
more of a
one's tricky.
stretch. But this next one, I think, well, maybe if you figure out what it is, it might be easier. What we're looking at is the doors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like this is one you're probably not even gonna like think of, but will make sense once I say it.
Yeah, okay. Because what it immediately makes me think of is an elevator, but those have been around for a long, long time, since well before Star Trek. So I don't think that's it.
So some context in the show is that these doors open automatically once you approach them, once you're ready to go through
Okay.
them.
Okay, so just automatic doors in general.
Yeah, I kind of gave that away.
Yes.
Specifically motion activated automatic doors. Before this show, automatic doors, they all had like a pad sensor that was triggered by weight of someone standing on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so this concept of having like a motion sensor to automatically open doors didn't exist before the show Star Trek. In the show, when they do it, actually, they have people physically pulling open and close the doors behind set. But
That's
it inspired, yeah, so they say it inspired the actual motion activated element of the automatic doors.
Yes, okay. Now that you say that, yes, that's very clear. And I did know that at one point, the automatic doors were triggered by like a pressure sensor. But I did not know that Star Trek had an influence on the switch over to motion sensors. So yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, this was one of the first places, at least from what I saw in my research, where those automatic movement sensor doors showed up in popular media. So, yeah, really interesting.
That is really interesting.
This one, again, maybe let me give you some context for it. We're looking at the screen that Captain Kirk is sort of leaning towards talking to. And so the character that we see on that screen, she is also one of the crew on the ship, and she is at her station doing her job, and Captain Kirk is somewhere else on the ship talking to her.
Right. So I would think that this might be an influence on like video conferencing or something along those lines.
Exactly. Yeah. But
Nice.
I wanted to give you the explanation just because it's a little hard because it's not moving. It might be hard to tell.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the object, I think you might be tempted to say computers, though I think the original computers do predate Star Trek considerably. But even still, actually, for kind of a more modern style of computer, this could have been potentially a reference or an influence, rather. And yeah, definitely on the video conferencing, which we're doing right now. So yeah, that is interesting.
It does kind of remind me of like the bigger computers that we had in the 90s. I don't know if Star Trek had an influence on that, but Starfleet definitely used computers, and they call the sort of AI intelligence on the ship computer. So computers existed as a concept, like they already existed, but I think Star Trek did a lot to sort of further imagine how they would be used.
Yes, it does remind me quite a bit of like the very old Macintosh computers. So yeah, for those who are old enough, I'm old enough to remember Macintosh computers being popular before they got popular again. So there was this period when I was very young where Macintosh computers had gotten very popular. Then they fell out of fashion for quite a while and didn't get popular again until much later. And this does remind me quite a bit of the Macintosh computers that were in like the computer lab that we had when I was in grade school. They were these big white like monstrous machines, super heavy. I'm dating myself a lot here, but yeah, these do remind me of those quite a bit.
Yeah. We never had those in our school. I think by the time I went to school, we mostly had Windows, but my mom had one of those big Macintosh computers because she actually used to teach classes and teach people how to use them.
Yes. Yes,
So
that
I
was the
also
thing.
remember those.
That's cool.
So yeah, video conferencing also inspired by Star Trek.
Very cool.
This one, what we're looking at here, it's kind of hard to see. We're looking at what they are holding in their hands. So we see Kirk in the first image is writing something. We see Jake in the other image, maybe reading or writing. And then at the bottom, we see someone holding the same device that has some sort of sci-fi information on it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the bottom image was initially throwing me off a little bit, but yeah, these look like maybe an early concept similar to kind of an iPad or other sort of touchscreen handheld computer like device.
Exactly. So these are sort of the precursor, I think, to tablets.
Hmm.
And they're actually called in the show pads, which
Oh,
actually stands for, what does it stand for? Let me check. Personal. Oh, I didn't write it down. Personal something something device, I think.
okay.
Pad
Mm,
is what it is. And so I've heard people even say that that's why the iPad is called an iPad,
hmm.
because it's even directly taking the name from Star Trek. I don't
Yeah.
have any sources on that. I don't know if that's true, but that is something I've heard.
Certainly seems like a strong possibility anyway. Even
Mm.
if maybe it was not the whole reason, that it would at least have been, yeah, an inspiration for the name, I would think.
Yeah.
Cool.
So these basically work like tablets on the show. Sort of like books. They have a lot of tablets, not like in the US where if you have a tablet, that's probably all you need is one tablet. But I think because they deal with like the idea is they have so much information that they have to like they can't save it all on one tablet. Maybe I don't know. But yeah,
Interesting.
sort of a precursor for the tablets we know and love today.
Cool.
And this is the last one. I've only got one picture here, and we kind of already mentioned this. So Spock is saying computer, and the computer is answering working.
Okay.
And there's
So,
there's lots of instances in the show like this.
yeah, of yeah, people talking to the computer. So yeah, I guess this would be kind of a very early inspiration for something like Siri, um, or Alexa, or otherwise, like, talking interface that's on your computer and able to both interact with you and also ideally control things on the computer. Which even still, actually, I mean, up until very, very recently, like, actually, it's March 2025 now. I think in April, Apple is supposed to come out with some major updates to Siri, to significantly increase the amount that it's actually able to do on the computer. Because right now it's just sort of, it's very limited. And I think most people agree that Siri overall, like, kind of sucks, and is not really that useful. But if Siri if you were actually able to kind of command your machine to take virtually any action that it's able to do normally, through voice control, obviously that would be pretty cool. Which I think is basically what was happening on Star Trek. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of one of those digital assistants, and I think it obviously works way better on Star Trek than it does yet in real life. So
Hmm.
we still have room for improvement, as uh, shown by our sci-fi shows that came before
Indeed.
it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Cool.
So those are the main ones. There are, of
Very
course,
cool.
like other things that people say might have been inspired by Star Trek or by other sci-fi series. But those were sort of the main ones that I found that I thought were really interesting and sort of easy to show you from all the way back in 1966, 67,
Yeah.
68 when Star Trek was on.
That is very cool. So maybe just as a final kind of question to throw back at you, Kit, before we wrap up, you are such a big fan of Star Trek, and I am also a big fan of sci-fi, as a genre. But for whatever reason, I've just never quite, gotten on board with Star Trek. I can't really tell you why. But why do you love it so much? Like, if you were going to convince me or any of our viewers to kind of give it a try, um, why do you love it so much? What's so great about it? And as a follow up to that, as you mentioned earlier, there are lots of different series of Star Trek. So which one would you recommend that somebody start with?
Those are all such good questions. So first of all, why do I love it? I've like you, I've always really liked sci-fi. I like fantasy and those sort of shows. But the thing that I really love about Star Trek is that it's very hopeful, you know? We see
Hmm.
this future society that to me looks really great, right? Like people don't have to worry about money. People have free health care, right? And people work and they create just because they want to and they're inspired
Hmm.
to, and it's what they're passionate about, without having to be, you know, drones at a company or something like that. And that is just sort of ideal to me. I really like that. So yeah, it's one of those things. Like I think there's a lot of like really gritty sci-fi out there that's sort of dystopian and sort of shows maybe more realistic ideas
Hmm.
of what humanity's future might be. But I like the hopeful element of it. We
Yeah,
see
that makes sense.
that people aren't always perfect. There is definitely a lot to be said about ableism in Star Trek, about
Hmm.
racism, how it appears more towards like alien species, certain alien
Hmm.
species. And there's still a lot of, you know, gender normativity and heteronormativity that I think come, those are hard words, sorry, but like
Okay.
they sort of stay in line with gender expectations and, you know, yeah, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. At least to a point, right? I think a lot of it has to do with what was allowed on TV, and
Hmm.
we do see a lot of sort of queer coding and characters who sort of hint at being trans or
Hmm.
queer in some way, even though it's not explicitly stated in some of the shows. So yeah,
Cool.
that's something that I like about it.
That would be an interesting follow-up episode we could do at some point. Queer-coded characters in Star Trek. I think that would be really interesting.
Oh, there's so many. That would be a long episode.
Maybe we could stick
But
with
I would
like
love to do that.
main characters or something. I
Main
don't know,
ones,
but yeah,
my favorites.
right. Okay, so if I was gonna get into Star Trek finally, now that I'm 40,
Yeah.
which season or which series would you recommend that I start with?
So honestly, I think it depends on what sort of content you like. Um, for example, for my mom has been really enjoying the original movies. And I think that's
Hmm.
because those are kind of familiar to her. But I think a lot of younger people, the original series and the original movies may be a bit harder to watch because they are old. The special effects, all those things, they're not great. They were great for the time, but compared to now, they're not so great. Um, I think like my age and your age, I think a lot of people really like what we call sometimes the golden age of Star Trek. So those are the ones that came out in the late 80s and the 90s. And the three big ones are Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and Star Trek Voyager. So
Hmm.
any one of those, I think, would be a good starting point for you, particularly Lawton.
Okay.
They can also be a little dated with special effects and things like that. My husband has watched with me a little bit, and he doesn't like them because they do look older.
Sure. As you would expect.
Yeah. If you're looking for something that has sort of the same feeling as more the original and the ones that came out in the 90s, but is very updated, Star Trek Strange New Worlds is the way to go. It takes place before the original series. And so Spock is in it, and Uhura is in it. And there are a few other characters that you see in the original series who make appearances, but there are also some new characters that are completely new. And you don't have to know anything about Star Trek in order to watch that, because it is supposed to be the first one, right? It is a prequel that comes before the original series. And because it is being shot still now, it's very updated on special effects and costuming and things like that. It looks a lot more realistic than some of the older ones.
Cool. Yeah, I can see that being potentially a good introduction for a lot of people, really. Maybe particularly younger people, but probably kind of for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think especially like if you are younger and you're kind of used to more modern shows, but you're interested in getting into Star Trek, I would 100% say Star Trek Strange New Worlds is probably going to be the way to go.
Okay, very cool. Well, yeah, that was a very interesting conversation about Star Trek. I learned a lot, especially about the influence that Star Trek has had on kind of modern technology. So yeah, that was very cool. Thank you for teaching us that today, Kit. It was very
Thank you for
interesting.
listening. Like I said, I'll talk about Star Trek anytime.
Yeah, we can definitely get some follow-up episodes later on. I think diving into maybe doing a little bit more of a deep dive into some topics around Star Trek. That would be fun. But yeah, thanks so much everybody for watching today. So if you did like the episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will be bringing you another episode in the near future. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.